I was trying to think of a creative way to describe Josh Lennox's career. I think it's sort of like this, and Josh, correct me if I'm wrong. It's like the show Amazing Race meets Survivor. And I know you've worked on the Amazing Race, but here's where I'm going at with this. You're innovative. You have found a way to ride the ebbs and flows of the business, and you're an adventurer. You have done so many different things in so many different capacities, and it's really been fun to chart out what you've done. And you're going to talk about your career on the Onto Something podcast with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. I am a national anchor for Fox Sports Radio. On Twitter at Bryan Fenley. Josh is media and technology specialist. And if I start here, Josh, in going back to a picture I saw of you, you were holding a soccer ball. You had to have been 8 or 9 years old. And before we get into the career and what you've done, I want to know the kind of game face that you carried yourself with on the soccer field when you were a youngster.
Yeah. Well, for me there, it was, I was competitive, definitely. But definitely, I really enjoyed the sport itself and the physicality of it. I just love to get on the field, and running was really when I think back to that time, was really running as fast as I can to go after the ball and to keep it, and just playing with my team. So those are really the things that I remember from that time.
You've worked with a lot of teams when it comes to the business world, but then you as a coach, and I know you work with youth sports in your son. And so I want to know about the temperament and the demeanor of Josh Lennox, not as the young player, but as the coach of a youth team.
Well, I've had an opportunity only once so far to coach, to help with a team, which was a baseball team, which I wouldn't say I'm the best at, but I really enjoyed getting out there. And luckily, I was just support. Unfortunately, our season started about this time 2 years ago,
Sure.
so it was cut short, and then I had to go to the individual coaching of my son, and he's he's really good. He's the type of person who you it doesn't seem like he's soaking it in, and then the next thing you know, he's doing the what I've been trying to have him do. So from that side of thing, as far as temperament, I think being a parent has helped me quite a bit. I may have been known to get a little frustrated in the past at some of my other roles, but I think being a parent has really helped me in sort of calming down, slowing down, and looking at the situation, not just from selfishly from my own experience, but really trying to empathize with the people I'm working with. And I think that's really helped me as a coach with when I work.
Oh, no question about it. You step outside of yourself. You mentioned your son is 7 years old. And so what is the ploy to get him to listen to you? What is the way in which you found is most successful in doing that?
Oh, wow. Take a deep breath is the first thing I do. And really, the other thing is come down to his level. I'm 6'2", so 200 pounds. So I'm like, bigger than he is, obviously, at 7. And one of the things is to really come down to a level with him eye to eye and to match his tone. So however he's feeling, well, not if he's feeling angry, I'd want to do that, but in that point, counter it. But if he's in a good spot, I try to match where he is sort of emotionally, and slow my speech down and talk to him in a way that's at his level. So both physically and mentally.
How do you feel like that empathy gene that you're talking about right there, Josh, has made you better in the workforce, working with your colleagues, in understanding where they're coming from, and then ultimately making a better product?
Yeah, it's empathy, I think, is one of the most important things out there right now, as far as is working with other people, is really understanding where they're coming from, because without that ability to connect emotionally and to understand where someone is, then you're never really going to have a true collaboration, which is what it takes to move things forward. And that's really at any level. You need to collaborate up and collaborate horizontally, and then collaborate down with where you are. I really found at this most recent role, I was helping out a company, and it really had to bring in a diverse group of people, and it was really not, maybe not everyone had a ton of media experience, and so it was really important at that point to understand where people are coming from and to taper the way I approached people and spoke with people about what our overall goal was. And really, when it comes down to it, once you kind of break through that initial barrier, ultimately people have the same goal, which is to they want to feel good about what they're working on. I mean, is really where they are. And so if we can work together to get to that point, then really you can break through all kinds of barriers.
You've done that constantly over your career, breaking barriers. And what I've noticed is how eclectic your career is. You are
Yes.
so diverse with your talents. It's not that you have set yourself into one cubby hole and I'm going down this road, but you've made yourself that much more, I would think, employable because of all you can do. And I think at the heart of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, you love learning, you love challenging yourself. Where did that come from?
I don't know, actually. The learning side, I've always been really curious about what's going on, and sort of back to the beginning of my media career, it's always been curiosity, and really going out and finding information to support that curiosity. I mean, I was one of the few people that would read manuals. Yeah, I remember the first time I saw an Avid, or the first time I saw like the sound design or something. When I saw an Avid, I asked if I could borrow the manual, and I just read it cover to cover, and I just have kind of proceeded in that way, where I took that approach of get a little understanding of what we're getting into, and then deep dive into the research to see how it works with the actual output. So, for example, been doing a lot of work recently with machine learning and artificial intelligence, and on how to automate specifically production and streaming. And that's what Highlight's doing right now. And so Highlight, we have this, it started in the sports world and we kind of shifted it through COVID. But where we are now is we took this thesis that people want adding dynamic motion and graphic overlays to production is actually going to help it, and it's been proven, of course, with television production and streaming and everything. But it's really hard for sort of a mid-tier and a lower tier content creator to do that. And what we've done is we've kind of delved into this machine learning. And I got to tell you, I didn't know anything about machine learning or AI when it started. It just seems like a really good concept. And what we did is we took the fundamentals of how you produce a stream or how you produce a show, and then you have to break it down into its most basic features, and then teach something that's a machine by inputting different logic and whatnot into it and creating an algorithm. And it was the same thing. It was like, great, here's what we wanted to do. Here's how I think it should work. And then going and just reading and researching and talking to people about it. And then on the other side of it, having a product that can actually do something. So I've kind of applied that create a base layer of understanding, and then building upon it to create sort of where the next level product or output or piece of content or whatever it might be.
Josh Lennox is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. Where do you do your best thinking and coming up with these ideas?
I don't know. I'm a little embarrassed about, but the shower.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but it's just the kind of the white noise of it, and the separation, and just the focus. So, in the mornings, I just get this sense of clarity when I'm there, and that sort of sets sort of where my goal for the day is going to be, or the week, or the month. So it's really in that moment of having that. And I'm not the only person that's like this. I've worked with other colleagues, and just like someone says, well, I had this great idea in the morning, and then after the 10th or 20th time of hearing that, I was like, do you mind asking like what time of day that was? What were you doing? And I was like, it was the shower. So I don't know what it is about that, but it just creates this sort of non-distraction point.
Yeah, it's like your brain is able to float around and you're not tending to something else. It's weird when we stop focusing and thinking on something, like we got to come up with an idea. It's when we let our mind drift that those ideas come. It's really interesting. And we've seen you over the course of your career coming up with all these great ideas. And the fascinating element of this, Josh, is not many people will take a manual and they'll want to read this thing. What is it about reading the manuals and knowing the intricate details and really getting into the science and the technology that captivates you the most, that, as you said, draws that curiosity?
I think the best correlation is when I was an editor for a long time. Sort of like I would say that's if I'm a tradesman, being an editor is my trade. And the way I look at that is that when you get a bunch of footage come in, it's just a bunch of puzzle pieces that are thrown down. And the idea is to create whatever the best version of that puzzle is to present to someone. And did a lot of work in reality TV where you're getting mountains and mountains of puzzle pieces, and then you have to kind of like form it into something that can be presented. And when I look at diving down and doing the research on something like this, I look at it as finding the puzzle pieces or the building blocks. And until, and I'm always ignorant, right? I would say, which I don't look at that. Ignorance isn't an insult. You know, I think ignorance can be cured by, or not cured, but you can get past ignorance with diligence and learning. So being, when I get all the puzzle pieces, it reduces the amount of ignorance that I have about something, and it presents us more solutions for the problems that ultimately we're trying to solve in these projects. So by having that baseline, it not only gives me an idea of what the puzzle pieces are, but I found through the process that I don't need to go back and do more research through certain things. So if I'm in a creative flow trying to solve something, having that baseline knowledge keeps the creative flow going. So I don't have to break out of it and solve a problem in there because I've educated myself enough to kind of work through.
Yeah, sort of to paraphrase what you're saying, and my reaction to that is, you know what you don't know, and that what you don't know, you'll learn, as opposed to going into something and saying, "Yeah, I know that," and then it ultimately not working out, and then suffering the consequences because of it. Josh Lennox is with me. I am Bryan Fenley. So when you look at what draws you in from content and what you think captures the eye, what are the tenets that you follow personally for that?
As a consumer or as a creator? Because I think they're a little different.
Let's go creator.
Okay. Um, Most recently, I think I've been around more commercial products, meaning that the content is really focused to accomplish something. Most recently, it was around live shopping and sort of this shoppable space for retail. And on that side, it was really about demonstrating to the consumer when they were blessed us with their attention, which is so hard to get now. So when you have that moment, can you communicate everything that you need to communicate to keep them a little longer and to cause an action? Because ultimately that's what you're trying to do. So in this case, like even down to advertising and promotion, it's really about in that first 3 seconds, first 2 seconds, first 1 second, can you give all the information before they click away? And you might get the benefit of a 30-second commercial or something like that to do, but it's really about in that moment, can you grab them? Because you're essentially a pre-roll to someone's attention. Even if they watch the full 30 seconds, you're only going to get maybe that pre-roll or maybe the tag. So it's really important to communicate in that. And then in longer form content with live shopping, it's really it's around a host a lot of times. So is the host compelling enough to prevent the click? And in those few seconds you can get to prevent the click and get them, is there enough context around that you can actually cause that action or extend your engagement a little bit longer? So it's really about finding those levers to make people stick around or create action. The other thing that I believe is really important is to utilize the tools around the video, because right now more than ever, it's not just about that little picture that's in there. It's how that little picture is corresponding with everything else around that. We did a project with TikTok, and and how does the video correspond with everything that's going on? Because if you can get the video to draw people in and then the engagements down below, then the job has still been completed on the engagement side of things. So I found that working sometimes with people with maybe a more traditional video background think that everything has to be shoved into the screen, when my perspective on it is that it's the screen plus the utilization of all the other space on whatever device is being used to consume.
You identified earlier in that last answer about commercials and working in that space. If you were to be the source of a commercial and you were advertising your pitch to people in 30 seconds or what you do best, what would that be, Josh Lennox?
I think something I do really well is identifying, I think I'm very helpful to a media organization or something like that, because what I can go in and do is an understanding of the entire workflow, from the ideation, the contracting, the hiring, the storyboarding, the development of team, the timelines, the distribution side of it. Where is it going to go? How is it going to go? What are the tools you need to do? The marketing of it. And then also through the entire production process. So what do you need to do to produce this bit of content? And then on top of that, all the workflows that go into making it happen. So that's really, I think, where it understands, and then where my understanding is. And then on top of that, keeping up to date with the media workflow, media environments, or sort of how the overall space in media is happening and shifting to adjust our output. Because as things shift, there's the main product, like Amazon, for example, is a great example of that. So they have big products that are coming out, and then they have all the supporting content around it. And so there's this need to understand what's the importance of the supporting content or the main content around it, and at what time, and how that is pulled off from all the production and workflows in between. So I think the full understanding of the 360 process is where my strength is, and being able to sort of hyper focus on each one of those to support a team.
And going back to some, sorry to interrupt.
That may have been more than 30 seconds.
Yes. Hey, it's more of a long form commercial. We see them all the time. So that works too. And, going back to what you were saying about, well, let me say this. So you traditionally, you were an editor. Obviously, you've done so much more than that, but I know that you worked on The Amazing Race a while back, and kind of following what you were saying there about trying to stay ahead and adapting to how the media space adapts. How do you personally try to stay ahead of the race, if you will, the rat race, the chase that is happening, so that you know what's happening before it's happening and that you can anticipate through that?
I read a ton of stuff, and then I actually try to put it into practice as much as possible, just on a personal level, or when I get into an opportunity. And then additionally, staying in contact with colleagues in the field, or even outside of the field, I think is good too. So speaking to investors, producers, content creators, executives, all through that. And then meshing that with what's publicly available through articles. Medium's a great example, or Quora, some of the other things where people go into these deep dive answers. So all that together, and then sort of distilling that, taking some time to think about it and digest it is I think is the other side of it. So I go and I'm a big walker. I like to walk around. And so I'll go and walk and just kind of think about everything that's going on in the media space.
So then let me leave you with this final question. You have all these ideas. They come, whether it's in the shower, you're walking, and then you have to try to transfer them to paper, to the computer. Sometimes for others, it doesn't always come out the way they were thinking. So what is it about the way your brain is able to function so well in transmitting what you're thinking to action in real life?
Yeah, and I think that's some of the challenge is that because of my diverse background, when I have to really keep in mind who the stakeholders are, who I'm speaking to, and focus. So it's not a one size fits all communication. So if I'm speaking to a producer, then I have to speak in production terms. If I'm speaking to a technologist, I have to speak in technology terms, and really finding a way to translate back and forth. And I think that's one of the benefits of my experience is that I can be on set, and I can talk to an actor, a content creator, I can talk to a creative producer, and then I can turn around and talk to a platform provider about streaming protocols and speeds and redundancy and all that stuff in the same conversation, and then layer in what are our rights commitments, where can we distribute it, what's our long tail use, how can we monetize this in the future, what's our short-term and long-term cost analysis of the content, and what are going to be our KPIs once we produce it. So it's really not a one size fits all. It's about taking that and distilling it down into communication, whoever that particular audience is.
And that audience is loving what they're seeing. And from somebody who has gone from the editing space into more in the technology media space and done so many different things from Coachella, you've worked on to Bonnaroo. For people to understand, you've worked obviously in tennis, you've done a lot of different sports, and you've done commercials and movies and on sets, as you talked about. And I love the diversity of what you've done. People say you can't specialize or you can't be good at many things. You can only be a master of one. That's not the way Josh Lennox works. Josh is a master of multiple things. He can do it because the way his brain functions, and it's a beautiful brain. And it's really neat to see how it functions here. And we learn about it and how those good ideas come out. Josh Lennox, I'm Bryan Fenley. Appreciate you talking about your career, your life, your drives, your passions, and even your skills as a volunteer baseball coach for your son.
Thank you for the time, Brian. Stay connected.